Julia Eberhardt with Bushel is the head of public relations and communications at Bushel, an agricultural software company based in Fargo, North Dakota. She leads Bushel's thought leadership efforts and drives the strategy and analysis behind the State of the Farm survey and report based on the responses of 1,300 row crop farmers from across the country. And Julia, I'm going to turn it over to you and I will let you share your screen.
All right. Thank you all for having me. Really excited to do this. And thanks, Anne, for mentioning. Very happy to take any of the questions that you have throughout, especially if you want me to pause a little longer on any of the slides. We do have a ton of data to get through. So I will go ahead and start sharing here. And so we can get going. Oh, wrong way. Okay. Um, so a little bit before we dive into the survey, just want to give a little bit of background. Not sure how many of you folks are familiar with Bushel. And just want to make sure, can you get, when I share my screen, you don't see like, I like to see the people and the names. So if not, let me know. Like that doesn't bother people. Um, anyway, we are a software company based in Fargo, as Ann had mentioned, and we work with cooperatives such as yourself. We have a software platform for folks to use that allows you to outreach with your growers, provide them information through different digital tools. And we also do have a farm management software called Bushel Farm. And the reason I bring this up is really to how people and talk about as we source the data, like where this data is coming from and things like that. And just kind of an understanding of who we are and why we do this survey every year. This is our network. The yellow badges there, those are just the different elevators, egg retailers, cooperatives around the country, all the different locations that have the Bushel platform. And the red dots there, those are different farm locations that are using Bushel Farm as well. So you can see a pretty good spread and specifically in your region as well. I just, some of the customers in Ohio specifically, you know, the Andersons, Lucky Farmers Co-op, Comark Equity, things like that. And so just a chance to see kind of where we're at and again kind of see that the um, your different region. So that was the basis stuff. Now let's get into the survey. As I mentioned, this is actually we get a really great response. It's 1,300 farmers every year respond to this, which does make it one of the largest farm surveys in the US. One thing that we do differently is we really focus on technology usage, payments and financial usage, and really how do farmers do business across the ag supply chain. So we do ask some demographic questions along the lines of like what they're growing, how large and things like that, but it really is for demographic purposes, not any sort of crop intention or things like that. This really is focused on for folks like yourselves to understand how farmers are thinking about doing business. And one of the takeaways as I talk today and opportunity to download the report is really thinking about as you're doing business with these farmers, like how are they looking to do business with you? How are they wanting you to show up and communicate with them and do the different things as they um, work with you. This has actually been going on since 2018. A company we acquired called FarmLogs actually started it, but it's something Bushel has seen value in continuing and growing and refining it year after year. So it's we do have some year-over-year data points as well. We do see in general, and I'll go through just some brief demographics again, just so you can understand the report a little bit from, 60% are full-time farm owners, 55% make decisions on their own, 30% share decision making with their family, but certainly I think have a voice. So a good basis here of farmers in the US specifically. So this is kind of some of the things that we found in the report. It's something to think about and curious, from your businesses too. As we see tech adoption, one of the things when Bushel started a long time ago, or like 8 years ago, it wasn't that long, um, was that really older farmers were going to be tech averse. Farmers weren't going to have apps on their phone, even though they all certainly have iPads and smartphones and things like that. And what we found is over the course of time, like certainly we see, from the younger span, tech adoption happening at a higher rate. But what we found is what people think it's young, quote unquote young farmers under 40, actually 50 is really the dividing point where we see a lot more tech adoption. Versus before it was maybe pictured as the under 40 sets. And so certainly it's growing. And looking at it where we asked the questions 2 or 3 years ago, those 40-year-old farmers weren't 50 yet. And so it's showing that the tech adoption is moving up faster rate for older farmers, not just that they're getting older. We're going to talk a little bit today about how relationships still do matter. Like thinking about if you're going to add technology, looking at technology that's not really there to disrupt, but really to support and how you manage those relationships. We'll go into some things around digital payments and how farmers are doing record keeping and really why and how that matters to cooperatives. So here is just, and again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time. So if you do want to go deeper, if I go too fast, let me know. But again, this is just to really show, as we think about our report, one of the things that I mentioned, especially around age, is ours does skew a little bit younger. The US, oh, sorry, my screen popped. Why it goes so fast? There we go. It does, the USDA census um, had um, 40% over the age of 65. We do have slightly higher, but it does start at 61, so we kind of don't have an apples to apples, but we do see um, specifically in this set a little bit higher rate of response. And again, a lot more of the decision makers. I do think a separate topic could be the psychology, and I don't know if we should ask this the same way of like people that maybe like do talk to their family as a sounding board, but still make all the decisions versus decisions are made by our family. But we do kind of ask that in a different way. Acreage, and again, this is really just to show our report typically does have larger farmers. Um, uh, the USDA Census of Agriculture showed 85% had less than 500 acres, and we're showing 60% of our report has more than 500. So again, you're going to find a lot more of the traditional larger row crop farmers answering the questions in this report, and a good swath, and actually, frankly, a good swath of like over the 2000 as well. So, and as you can see, kind of growing that way year over year. Okay. As mentioned, a lot are the full-time farm owners, a handful of landowners and things like that, but vast majority are the actual farmers. And then growth plans and something we were questioning as we went into this year. As we know, farm economy, the news has not been super great. Folks looking to tightening up down here. But what we found, and granted, this is a next 5 years, so this is longer term thinking, that we actually didn't see a lot of change for people looking to exit or get smaller. And so you can see here the year over year, um, just a small percentage that were actually not intending to grow at all, like just went down 4%. And that 4% just said, same size. So it is really looking at, and again, I just still think it's great that 35% of all farmers in our survey looking to grow over the next 5 years. And again, 85% are, if you combine those, like holding steady or growing. Okay. I'm really briefly going to go through concerns and opportunities and spend some time on the other slides, but just I always laugh at this one because of course, right? It's what are farmers most concerned with? They're concerned with how much money they're making, how much money they're spending, and if they're profitable. Those things are there. Certainly year over year, a couple of years ago, price of equipment when it was peaking, we saw that actually be a little bit higher. I think inputs was maybe number one last year. Commodity, again, with bad commodity prices now, that's nudging, but overall, right, in thinking about the farmer persona, who farmers are today, while these things matter, uh, at the end of the day, right, they're business. They're like the rest of us. It's like how how am I putting food on the table for my family? How am I, if I'm looking to grow, how am I, you know, looking at what I'm putting down, what I'm selling at, what the profitability is. Concerns and changes, um, a lot thinking about management practices, um, and or just, not a lot of changes. But this was actually just a write-in answer just to kind of capture like what folks are thinking. Um, and where they're looking to, like what the opportunities are, being more efficient, uh, still really strong. Improving my marketing strategy, that's another one that was maybe lower a couple years ago, but again, with the commodity prices has moved up to be stronger as well. I'm gonna skip that one. Okay, so let's dive into kind of the technology questions and what do we look at that? This slide is my favorite whenever people say that farmers are not willing to uh, adopt technology. We've got a solid 36% willing to experiment with new. There's no caveats, right? Like that's almost 40% willing to experiment, try new things. I think certainly we see with the seasonal cycle, they don't have that opportunity, as frequently. It's a one time a year, I'm going to try something new. But they certainly are willing, and it might be even my husband farms, and he'll talk about maybe doing something new on a certain section or different fields or things like that, but definitely willing to try, pilot and test things, and see what's working. Um, Still 22%, they want to see others using it first, but definitely want to, not adverse. Um, and then, this 19% is kind of that in the middle of like, if I see it working, then I will. And we actually did our own webinar a few months ago, and there was a debate because I really lump in to say, okay, this 58%, very still solid. Like these are your tech adopters. There's a person that said like even the 19%, right? Still willing. This is not tech averse. Like once we get down here, sure, there's a lot more cautious, a lot more unwilling, but a very small percentage. And this is all ages as well. Certainly, we saw some age changes. Um, that ages 31 to 40, it was almost 60%. But like I said, I think overall, one of the things in Bushel's mission, and even myself included, right? It's that like, how do we break the stereotype of the uh, of farmers not using technology? And I think this data points to it exactly. And then we all probably have our anecdotes as well. This is one that saw huge changes this year, which was interesting, and it's how are people um, keeping, or how are farmers keeping track of record keeping? And one of the things that we've been talking about is when it comes to climate programs, when it comes to traceability programs, things like that, like the number one thing getting started, no matter what, is just having good records. And I think you folks, I'm sure, have seen too, right? Your best farmers have some sense of what they're doing day to day, not just in their head, not just like in the old style notebook in their shirt pocket, but they're starting to really get the stuff on paper, or well, not on paper, on into a better tool. Um, so pen and paper, 2003, our survey had 65% still using pen and paper for record keeping. Dropped down, decent amount to 2024, and then just like plummeted to 20%. Interesting enough, spreadsheets also going down, so they're kind of leapfrogging and not going from pen and paper to spreadsheets, but rather looking at there's a whole different selection here, right? So we include QuickBooks, which is more accounting, Bushel Farm, which is our farm management, Climate Field View, John Deere Ops, and looking at like these are tools that folks are using to try to keep up with like what is happening in the operation. Um, how can they start calculating? I think we have some slides here even too on like cost of production, like how do they know what they're spending? How can they calculate it easier than just kind of figuring out from all of their receipts of what they spent on, what their input bills were and how much did they apply on that field, but be able to quicker calculate to understand and help them understand what they should be selling at. This one, some of it's not a surprise, but I'm going to kind of throw the other takeaways as well. So using an app or software for farmers, what's the number one thing they're looking at? Of course, it's the weather. That should be no surprise. That's like consistently always up top. But if you look here, so accounting, banking activities, financial record keeping, all very strongly financially related. And so they're looking for ways that they can, again, kind of understand like what is the financial position of their farm. We've seen actually growth, especially we added banking activities this year, but financial record keeping, same thing, kind of moving up because, in a farm year where it's getting tighter, they need to understand where they're at, and things like that. And this, while very busy, I will just point out why the yellow is here and why the gray is here. Yellow is so under 50, and this is what I was talking about earlier, is where's the tech adoption line? And it's under 50 is where they're starting to get into the, what's in the track, what's in the planter, what's in the combine, how are they monitoring what they're doing? Sorry for my mouse, it keeps on skipping ahead. Um, you know, Financial record keeping, like this cluster right here really shows um that younger farmer set is looking for tools that really help them with what they're doing in their day-to-day. For payments and finances, so paper check is something that's really interesting. If you look overall in our daily consumer lives, like hardly anyone uses a check. I think anyone, uh, I've had direct deposit for probably at least 15 years, if not longer. Um, but payments in agriculture are still by paper check. Um, this is the first one is getting paid by a paper check, what their preference is, how they if they use direct deposit, and if they prefer to use direct deposit. And one thing that's really interesting, so okay, we can have a conversation and say, well, 60% of farmers still want to get paid by paper check. They see nothing wrong with it. It does dip slightly in the under 50 to the 54%. But like, okay, so now we can look at, well, how are they getting paid today? And 85% of farmers under 50 are getting paid by paper check. And if you look here, that's a 30% differential. So there's still a solid gap of what farmers are looking for in their payments versus how they prefer to get paid. And ACH, same thing, that's a slight uptick to looking for ACH. But I think overall, just kind of interesting to see um, what how the paper check is impacting agriculture. Um, Interestingly, so this is crop inputs and purchasing. Still like a wide amount of folks still want to use paper check when it comes to purchasing. The thing I will point out here is so the yellow is the preference, and that's where you're going to see there's no real like second place or something that's coming out to say this is like absolutely one. But I think what you see is just there's an uptick in all of them. And so like, willing to do more with ACH or credit card or debit card, um, things like that. But still a lot of paper check usage. However, um, paper checks aren't like the best idea from both the party of the cooperative and the farmer when looking at it. So for the folks that did say that they did not prefer paper check for their payments, we asked them kind of why, and I was even shocked to see like it's all of the above. It's all of these reasons. Right? It's the losing check in the mail. It's the speed to getting the check, especially over the past year. I think many of us have plenty of anecdotes of how the mail service has slowed way down. Um, the faster than driving to the bank, faster than going and getting it. And like frankly, it's been a huge amount of fraud, especially since the pandemic, 385%. Um, and so like while the paper check lingers, we do see that like it's going to be phasing out here over the next 4 years, especially as other technologies come to kind of help and provide more secure payment methods. Credit card usage is interesting. Um, because so I think you folks have seen, right? Like the fees on credit cards, it doesn't make sense, especially for crop input purchasing. So, when we're talking about working with your ag retailer, for policies regarding credit card use, um, there's at least 19% that are, charging for credit card or offering discounts for not using it. Like definitely there's incentives to not be using credit cards, again, because of the cost structure for what the fees are to what those bills are. And then right, farmers aren't wanting it either. Only 8% of farmers prefer a credit card for purchasing inputs. The funny part is in this data is how often do you use a credit card for farm purchases? And we're still like, okay, 52, what is it? Oh, 70%. 70% are using it at least once a month. 20% are six or more times a month. How are they using the credit cards if not for inputs? My guess is, right, energy, fuel, your general Tractor Supply runnings, uh, Walmart, any of those general store purchases is probably where they're using their credit cards, although not for with their ag retailers. Digital wallets. So if you think about like PenPal or PayPal, Venmo, um, those types of things. So those are just things that we are seeing growth overall. This is actually from a different study, that just consumers in general, um, that digital wallets are projected to overtake debit cards at the point of sale by 2027, that they're outpacing the growth of all of them. And we do ask farmers uh, if they use any of these tools. And I actually have a different theory on this as well, but we'll go into this. So we looked at a couple different slices. The one is under 40 because for payments under 4, so overall technology under 50, that's the tipping point. Digital payments is still a little bit skewing a little bit younger at 40. And then we do actually put this also with the folks that are willing to try new technologies at any age. And that these are the folks really that are starting to use this in their personal life. So if you look there, PayPal, Venmo is up there, Apple Pay, Zeller, kind of some of the other ones. There's a none, the none of above is still 30%, but 70% are using something, maybe even from their bank, as a more convenient way to be managing their payments. I also have a theory, and this is just my personal experience, so if anyone wants to chime in, but my husband's family runs a hunting lodge, and they were looking to do some sort of payment. I don't know if it was a credit or what. I can't even remember what it was, but I'm the one that actually does have the Venmo. And then the gentleman he was talking to, his wife also had the Venmo. And so I'm also curious on like, we don't ask gender-based questions, but I'm like, how many wives or female farmers are the ones that are actually, is this higher in that sect? Because it seems like there's a lot more of that, but that is very anecdotal, not based on any of our survey data. Just something interesting as I'm pretty sure that situation came up as I was asking this question and looking at this data. So, okay, doing business with their grain and ag retail companies. So hopefully this is no shock to you, and I think something that you guys talk about quite a bit, right? It's the how much does the relationship matter? The side on the left has to do with selling grain. The side on the right has to do with buying inputs. If I do this survey, well, not that if I do this report over again, I would make this, oops, sorry, my mouse every time I move it. I would adjust this to be like 1-to-1 because you can see here, like it's more fitted for the screen, but buying inputs, very much relationship business. Certainly there are other factors, especially around, cooperative membership, uh, 13%, how they, their application, things like that, what their financing looks like. The selling grain, yes, relationship matters, but there's also these other things as well. Oh, and I should caveat and say, oh yeah, there we go. It does say that, right? If bids and hauling distance are similar. And so obviously if they're 30 miles closer, like that's going to be a different differentiator than what we asked. But co sorry, don't know why my mouse keeps doing that. Um, the cooperative membership still third at 18%. Different marketing programs, faster payments, all of those factors as well. But seeing that relationship does still matter. And so when thinking about, and we're going to go through, like, here's all these different ways farmers want to connect. It's not to replace that relationship. It's not to talk to you. It's to really probably simplify what you guys are and how you guys are working together so that when you are having that relationship, there's just stronger and better conversations. Um, again, the left is around submitting grain offers or selling grain via mobile app. And the one on the right is buying inputs and really actually specifically ordering, because that's actually how we asked it. Like, how do you order? How do you prefer to order? So on the left, submitting grain offers, you can see these are where the gaps are. So for those former farmers under 40, um, about 16% or less are getting the opportunity or ability to submit grain offers to buyers through a mobile app. Um, and yet, if you look here, even under 4, that 31 to 40 is up to 44%. Under 50, still at 30%. Solid gaps here for that idea that they might have the conversation with you. I presented this data to some of our customers, and someone had mentioned they're having the phone conversations, they're still talking to them, but they can't get that commitment over the phone. But then 4 hours later, after they've had, dinner or even they've slept on it or whatnot, boom, then it comes in through the mobile app, and it makes it much easier from both the farmer perspective and the elevator perspective to be able to accept that offer, to have it autofill the contract, things like that. And so there's a convenience side, even if you're talking to them, it's the actual, hitting or saying, yes, I want to do this. And I think the same thing's true for the ordering of the fertilizer seed, and all the inputs. It's not about the, what am I going to order things, or, the overall, what's our strategy for the year for what we're putting down. It's much more of like just the tactical of like, okay, this is what I'm going to actually order, once I get finalized, like my numbers and put it in there. And so again, you'll see it's very new. Not many people offer it. And but it is something that, like, again, those younger farmers like still have a desire to do some form of that without. Um, and then ordering inputs. Overall, it's, in a good positive way to see, right? Most farmers are like, you know, pretty satisfied with the ease of ordering inputs from their retailers. And I'm sure that this 34%, there's always folks out there who are like, well, you always can improve, right? Like no matter if it's perfect, you can't say that. It always can improve. And so overall, it's most farmers are actually okay with how it is done today. The two things that we'd point out to say, like, and again, this may not be a shocker, right? It's the better transparency for price information, and then easier access to quotes from my retailer. Those are really the two main ones. I mean, everything, there's a whole bunch of other stuff down here that we could look through, but like those are kind of the two that we're pointing to say, like, as a retailer, if you're looking for like, how do I improve my farmer experience? And I know that there is some caution, some folks, concerned that, the farmer's just going to price shop. They just want your price and your quote, and they're going to bring it over to, you know, the guy down the road. But there is something with like that consumer experience, that being easy to do business, so that it's just like, hey, like I know they may be slightly more, but I know what I'm getting. I can see my quote, I can sign it, I can pull it back up easier, just, right in my portal. All those things, I think would help make a better farmer experience, and they would value that. Um, Trusted resources. Uh, so this again should come to no surprise, but we did kind of ask like, who do you, who are you relying on the most for kind of what's out there for what you should be thinking about. Agronomist number one, marketing advisor number two, grain buyer number three, local peers kind of fourth, and then as you can see, there's a kind of just some media as far as like if they listen to podcasts, things like that. One thing that I find interesting here is actually larger farmers, um, their local peers drops to like 3% or something like that. Like it's really a drop there as far as the larger farmers not really caring what the folks in their area are doing. And then for farms more than 5,000 acres, there's a bump here, again, from 15%. Oh, here, 4%, that was the local peers. And really what they're doing instead, so they're subscribing to marketing advisory sources. And so again, if you're an elevator thinking about, okay, especially for those larger farms, they're looking for some of those advisory insights and programs that maybe aren't just like from what the locals are doing. And so that's kind of something there. I'm gonna sorry, I thought I had unhid this slide, and this is a really great slide. And I realized as I went through it, I did not. And it's the reason I sometimes skip it, but I think for your audience, it's helpful. It's really hard to read and really hard to see because there's a lot of data here. But what this is, it's how do farmers want to receive information from you? And then we did talk about this earlier with the breakouts, but like how do they want to submit grain offers, and how do they want to order fertilizer? So I kind of skipped ahead when I gave that age breakouts because that's when I realized I had missed this thing. But this is kind of what I wanted to point out when you're looking at like all of this thing is a couple things. One is, and this is where we came to, right? Like relationships still matter. So this is yeah, they might not want to hear basic information from you, or at least at a lesser rate. The good or the bad is like they want it kind of in a few key different places, right? Like they don't mind getting texts, I would say. Oh, this is phone actually, the red, and then yellow is in person, email too. So if you're thinking about how do I just get out general, information, um, you know, those could be some channels. And then as they get into kind of the tactical things, that's where again the phone conversations and the in person, they really do want to see that. And I think as I had mentioned, what I look at this data is really the gaps. And then I showed in the screen earlier of really, even though it says here the 9% difference for submitting grain offers to preference. It really is that under 50 is what's driving that. Same thing with the preference for ordering fertilizer chemicals. While it's only showing a 5% difference here, or in the in person, like the one, or actually in here mobile, it's 4%, but it's really being driven by, in the 6% here. It's really being driven by that under 50 set is there, that's kind of skewing that to be stronger. But I did want to kind of think about, as you're thinking about what your experience is working with farmers, right? It's the meeting them where they're at. And so they're at these different spots. I think some are, again, from the general information, is different than like the actual technical transactional stuff that you folks are doing with them. So apologies that did not get in the right order. Um, okay, so trusted resource was agronomist, marketing advisor. And then the other stereotype that I want to break today is that farmers are really tight with their data. They hate sharing their data. Their data is theirs. I know in our space we hear a lot of that, especially like in the past. Maybe they felt their data wasn't treated right, or they've been kind of promised this idea that their data is valuable and people will do something with it or even pay them for it. And I think the thing to think about is farmers actually, number one, share their data more than even they'll admit. Um, and two, it has to have value. And so like here you'll see like obviously like they're willing to share their data with their accountant. They're willing to share their data with their banker. They're willing to share data with crop insurance, and agronomists. Retailers a little less. Grain marketing advisors really low, and grain buyers super low because again, I think that relationship, and thinking about how they think, it goes back to the farmer, right? How am I going to benefit from providing this information? And if you're a buyer, or a marketing advisor, you may be like, but I can help you sell at a better price if I understand what your, cost of production is, and I can help you with some price targets and things like that. But that's probably where that farmer distrust is there. But if they do find that, obviously, from their side, they're like, yeah, I want to provide the banker and lender with like, here's a great plan of where I'm trying to go so that they will give me that loan again. Or, the crop insurance, right? I want to be protected, and so that I do get um something, depending on like what the weather and conditions is. So there is actually, farmers are willing to share their data. It's just it has to have value to them. And you need to be able to prove like it benefits you to help, provide me with that information. And the better that you can keep track of it, better going back to that record keeping and the different record keeping tools. It's like, yeah, because the better that you can like easily bring up and say, hey, this is where I was last year. This is what I plan to change. This is where we're going, things like that. And to be able to have those strategic conversations, it takes insights on your side, but it also does take the farmer a little bit to be able to provide you with the clear picture. It's just that you need to make sure that the farmer understands that of the, you know, if you're looking to share, or if you're looking for a different, access of what they're doing or things like that. Um, making sure that the farmer understands like it's for their benefit. Financial services. So this is just, what type of financial services that they're relying on. Um, if you look here, so there's, the operating loans, equipment financing, and lines of credit. Those are kind of the top three. Farmers looking at insurance products as their financial service, which I know is a thing to be debated, but um, and then their real estate loans, depending probably on their land ownership position. And so those were just different ways that we looked at how they are operating their lines of credit. And as you can see here, and again, this is super busy when I'm presenting, but in the report, if you do get time to take a look at the full report, you can dive in a little deeper. But we just did some swaths of like based on age, based on size, and based on growth plans. And one thing that's interesting is like the bigger the farm, the hunger for growth, like the more likely they're going to be leveraged. The more likely that they're going to be using some form of financing, whether it be the operating loan, whether it be the equipment, um, whether it be the lines of credit, like they are using that to help fund what they're planning to grow or support with the larger acres. Um, Similarly, this is like different banking services and the way that we kind of framed up before the like submitting grain offers or buying inputs. This is actually around banking services and tools. And so this is preference. And as you can see here, the thing that I always point out is it's like the transactional stuff that they're looking for the website and app on. So it's the like checking the account balances and accessing statements and things like that. Obviously, communicating with their banker, like they do want to, talk to them either in person or on the phone, receiving advice similarly. Depositing checks, like as you can see here, 24% And where's the making payments or transferring funds, 25% on the app. And I think as you'll see, this again, this goes back to like, yes, overall, it seems like there's not a lot of like interest in online, transacting, but it really is the 18 to 40 set that's going to drive that. So again, think about in 10 years, not only are those folks older, but also just the tech adoption is going to speed it up faster, just the way we talked about those other tech tools. That the 50 is the new 40 for the general technology. If it's 40 today, that means in just a few years, the 50 is going to be the new 40 for these tools, and those farmers are um, going to be here. And so looking at online preferences for applying for financing, again, you see a pretty good, you get 20% gap for on the website. And even was that 20% on mobile app, making payments or transferring funds, 60% for the under 40 for a mobile app, a huge gap compared to the 25% overall. Uh, and then depositing checks, same thing. Um, 65% willing to do that 18 to 40 versus the overall 25%. And so this is where they're not just ready to like access their information. They feel comfortable moving money. They feel it's secure. They have confidence that there's no fraud. They understand how to set up their systems probably for um, that reduction in fraud. And so there's that. It's kind of like I said, back to that online banking, digital wallet, all those tools are going to be more and more widely accepted throughout time. And this is just one of those like leading indicators to say like, yes, it's coming. Even if you don't feel like it is today. Like that's always like that's my probably like one of my pieces of advice. It's like even if it doesn't feel like it today, like some of these trend lines show like it's going to be coming and it's going to be more widely adopted. And so think about from your business side, how are you adapting your teams? How are you adapting your processes to be able to set up to accommodate how these farmers want to do business with you? Yeah, so that is like kind of, I guess I gave you my takeaways. There is a slide here. I think, again, we talked about this, like farmers are, expecting some form of efficiency in doing business with you, that those relationships still do matter. But it's really about that convenience. And again, we talked about that a little bit, or is the idea that like some of these tactical tasks, like they don't, they still want to talk to you, but at the end of the day, they might hit the submit button or things like that, or make, request a payment button. Um, and yeah, the data sharing, we talked about that, and that it's really the value and how payments are evolving. So if you want to download, and I will put this in the chat, is if you go to bushelfarm.com/state of the farm. Hopefully I typed this in correctly. I should have had a QR code on my thing. You can download the full report. There's some slides I skipped. There's some slides I probably went through really quickly that maybe you wanted to go back on. I'm happy to do the Q&A though, if there is any questions.
Looks like we have some. Can you see the chat, Julia?
Oh,
If you can, I can read it to you. Daniel said,
uh,
"Do you have
here we go.
any insights into what the business on the other side of the equation are
Oh,
looking for
you're asking
regarding?"
like, do we survey agribusinesses and kind of what their perspectives are? No, but that is the plan. We write currently only if I'm let me know if I'm not interpreting your question correctly, but we do have plans to do some sort of like state of the agribusiness to kind of ask them kind of the inverse of these to see like where their tech adoption lies, what their hurdles are, things like that. And so your question asking is a nice prompt to like move that up in the priority.
Well, thank you, Julia. We appreciate it, and we'll be in contact with you.
All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for joining.